Welcome to the Andy Bashir Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 2 of a season we're calling Prime for 2026. This is where we introduce you to Democratic primary candidates from around the country so that you can get an inside look at important races. This episode, we have one of the most important primaries in the country, and that is for Michigan governor. Michigan is an incredibly important state, not just in 2026, but also if you're interested in 2028. Its current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, a good friend of mine, a great governor, is term limited. And we have a really competitive primary. When you look at the candidates, you've got Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist. You have Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State. And you have Sheriff Chris Swanson from one of the largest counties in Michigan. Each are thought to be transformational in their roles. Each are thought to be real leaders, not just in Michigan, but nationwide. So today, we're going to bring you about 15 minutes with each of them so that you can get to know them a little bit better. You can hear what they want to do for Michigan, and you can decide if you want to get involved. 2026 is going to be absolutely critical for the future of our country. It's going to be critical to flip the U.S. House of Representatives so that we have a separate and independent branch of government that will make sure that they institute the checks and balances that our founders put into the Constitution, and that is their job. But also, these governor's races, 36 across the country, are absolutely essential. Who the governor is impacts the lives of the citizens of that state more than any other official, and Democratic governors get it done. We create more jobs. We expand and not contract health care. We put in the real investments for long-term better public safety. We're pro-public education. We make sure that our people get the essential services they need, so these races are important. This is a really exciting episode. This is going to be a feature episode as we move forward and introduce you again to primary candidates from around the country. I hope you'll enjoy it. Let's get it started. Our first candidate today on the Andy Bashir Podcast is Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist II. He is Michigan's 64th Lieutenant Governor and a lifelong Detroiter. He's a former software engineer and public servant, and he's focused his work on expanding economic opportunity, protecting access to clean water, strengthening infrastructure, and advancing equity across the state. Garlin brings a data-driven, people-first approach to governing Michigan's future. Garlin, welcome to the podcast.
It's so great to be here with you.
So Garlin, let's start out. I mean, your background in computer science is so different than a lot of public servants. Tell us how that's kind of defined you and how it led you to becoming the lieutenant governor.
You're right, Andy. Look, there have been exactly 0 computer engineers, software developers, programmers who served in statewide elected office in America. And so I think it brings a different kind of energy. I'm a problem solver, a solution builder, somebody who makes things happen and makes systems work for people. And frankly, how this world is changing, where more technology is involved in more parts of life and is frankly eating more things, eating more information, eating more energy resources. I think we need people in public service who understand that realm, who the big tech companies can't bully and can't lie to, someone who can sit at the table with them and get a good deal for people. So that's how it shapes my service. And I started this, frankly, when I was little. My grandma bought me a computer when I was 5 years old, made me the first kid on my block on the east side of Detroit to get a computer. And I fell in love with that thing. And I loved it all the way through, how to take it apart, put it together. My first job at 16 was building computers, and I installed them in rec centers across the city of Detroit. So I love what technology can do for people, but I also know how it can harm people. And I want to be the governor of Michigan to protect people from those harms and position them to use that technology to make people's lives better.
So that certainly leads into AI. And I can say as a governor, it's a complex topic. We know it's a big part of the future. It brings some advantages. I think about medical research, but it also brings some concerns. If you're elected governor of Michigan, what's going to be your approach to AI?
People first, people centered. The technology companies do not get to dictate the terms of the lives of Michiganders or, frankly, anybody in this country if we stand tall and recognize that we are the ones who create the value. We are the ones whose creativity and ingenuity will point the technology in the right direction. I think about this the same way Steve Jobs thought about it. He saw personal computers as bicycles for the mind, meaning they were tools to help us be more effective, not to replace us. So I'm going to make sure that people in Michigan, a state that's been impacted by how automation has impacted manufacturing for generations, a state where our agricultural sector has been impacted by, technology in a positive way, we can use technology to make good things happen for people, to create more opportunity, not less, and to not let the companies that are driving this technology and developing it take advantage of our people or our resources. So as governor, I'll stand up for people first.
You've been lieutenant governor, serving alongside my friend Gretchen Whitmer, who's my vice chair on the Democratic Governors Association. Tell our listeners what role you took as lieutenant governor, what areas you stepped up and led in.
First of all, congratulations on being the chair of DGA for
Thank you.
2026. And Governor Whitmer is excited to be a vice chair. I know that. We talked about it when she assumed that role. So, as lieutenant governor, in addition to presiding over the state senate, which I've done, I also have taken on some really important areas. One has been really leading the new investments that the state of Michigan has made in affordable housing. In every community across all 83 counties in Michigan, I talk to people who are worried about how much housing costs. I talk to, I'll give you an example. I met this family where the mom was really frustrated because her daughter had moved in, after she had, had been working and gotten evicted from her apartment, moved in with her. But of course, she brought her boyfriend along with her,
Mm.
which meant she had another grown man who she had to feed in her house, which meant that she had to end up getting a second refrigerator in her garage. Now, why is that crazy? Because when utility bills are going up and getting super expensive, another refrigerator, in addition to another mouth to feed, was real expensive. So she wasn't having it. She was really upset about it. Said, we need to get more affordable housing in this community so my daughter can get the hell out of my house. Like, I think about it in terms of making sure that we can, just take care of people. And so that's why I drove the biggest investment in our state's housing trust fund in the history of the fund, $250 million and now $50 million ongoing to make sure we can build more homes. And that's led to 40,000 plus homes being built in the last 2 years, the fastest pace we've ever built new housing units in the state of Michigan. I've also focused on childcare. Look, Michigan, I started a program called Caring for My Future in 2021. We were planning to open up 1,000 childcare facilities in 2 years. Well, because of the effectiveness and efficiency of what our team did, we opened up 1,300 childcare facilities in 13 months because we have that much demand for childcare. There are families that are leaving communities because they can't afford for a place for their kid to be, to learn, to be taken care of, to be set up for success at school. So I've helped to lead that effort. I also have led the effort to connect hundreds of thousands of Michiganders to the internet for the first time. Fast internet, high bandwidth, high speeds, that's affordable, and in some cases, even free. So they can participate in this 21st century economy, get access to healthcare services and jobs and educational opportunities. Just changing Michigan for the better. So my job is to make sure I can create the conditions for people in Michigan to be successful. And the last illustration of that is the work that I've done on our criminal justice reform work and modernize our criminal legal system. I created the most progressive, expansive, and inclusive automatic criminal record clearance program in the nation that has led to 4 million offenses being cleared off of people's records after they hadn't committed another offense for 5 years. It's led to almost 400,000 people being able to fully participate in the economy and civic and economic life, be reunited with their families, go to school, get an apartment, get a home, start a business. These people are people we need in Michigan's economy and in our lives, and it will make 1 million people job eligible in 10 years.
So, very impressive record as lieutenant governor. But as you know, all races are about the future. So, what is your vision that you would bring as governor of Michigan?
It's very simple. I want a Michigan where everyone knows that they can afford to stay here and succeed. that everyone has a chance to answer yes to the question of, is Michigan the best place for me to build my family and my future? That starts with people knowing that when they're ready to build that family, that they will be guaranteed childcare. I'll make Michigan the second state in the country to guarantee childcare for every single family in Michigan. That also helps us not only make sure that parents have someplace they can, frankly, put their kids while they're going to work, but it makes them more productive. It makes them more able to start that business they've been sitting on, but they couldn't afford to do because they didn't know what they would do for childcare. It gives them a pathway to be able to be their best and whole self in Michigan. That also helps position our kids to be able to roll into our universal pre-K program and roll into a finally fully funded public education program. I'm a public school kid. Detroit Public Schools, Farmington Public Schools, the greatest university in the history of the world, the University of Michigan. Like, public schools being fully funded positions our state and our people for success and growth and opportunity and innovation. I'll fully fund them for the first time ever in the history of the state of Michigan. I want folks to roll into a chance to go to college debt-free, guaranteed, because you shouldn't have to go into debt to take a bet on yourself and your education and your dreams. It'll lead to people making more money, increased household incomes, which means increased quality of life. People starting more businesses, that means more job creation, because the majority of jobs that are going to be created going forward in the next 10 years are going to come from new businesses, not legacy businesses. And also, finally, I want to make sure that everyone in Michigan has a home. I talked about this problem with affordable housing across all 83 counties in the state of Michigan. We can do something about it. We can build more homes and more types of homes. We can make it easier for people to afford to get into those new homes or those renovated homes. We got a housing stock that is ripe for renovation all across the state of Michigan, and we can invest in that and build it. That's what I'll do as governor.
So you had me until the best university in Michigan piece. So just
I
remember,
gotta tell the truth, Andy. I'm sorry.
Jamal Mashburn
All right.
almost beat the Fab Five on his own.
Almost.
Almost true. Uh, so we as Democrats talk about the what a lot because we've got these things that we really want to do. But on the podcast, we also like to focus on the why. What's your why? What drives you so much that you'd leave a lucrative area, with computer science and software development and the rest, and say, I want to be governor of Michigan?
Andy, it, I'll tell you a story. So, I grew up and was born and bred in the state of Michigan, in Detroit and its suburbs. I went to University of Michigan. And when I was thinking about where I wanted to build my future, I wanted to be a software developer when I graduated from college in 2005. And I thought at that time that in order for me to be the professional I wanted to be, that I had to go to another part of the country to do that. It broke my heart to have to say yes to some place that wasn't Michigan to build my career. I don't want anybody to have a reason to say no to Michigan. I remember the conversation I had with my mother when I said, "Mama, I'm looking at this and I want to work for Microsoft and I got to go to Seattle to do that." I remember that look in her eye. It broke her heart because she was like, "Am I ever going to see my grandkids when he has them? Am I ever going to see my only child as consistently as I want to?" Every parent in Michigan has that anxiety. I spoke to a dad from Escanaba, Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, who was worried about his daughter leaving and never coming home. Because when somebody leaves the community, when a kid leaves the community dies a little bit when that happens. I don't want any community to die like that. Instead, I want our communities to be places where people are excited to be, that has an economy that's diverse enough to have a place for everybody. Because I know that Michigan is big enough to include everybody in this future. I came home to make that happen for Michigan 11 and a half years ago. And I'm proud to do it as lieutenant governor today. And I'm excited to do it as governor tomorrow.
For all of our listeners that are outside of Michigan, give them your pitch for getting involved in this race and supporting Garlin Gilchrist.
Michigan is a state that does and will matter in 2026, in 2028, and every year beyond. Michigan is decisive in presidential elections. It is decisive in our culture, whether it's Motown music, the invention of the assembly line, or the innovations that are going to drive the future of this country. If you can make something happen in Michigan, then you can make something happen that's going to change the world. People who make things happen here, who hustle harder, who build, and who break things, they're the ones who invent the future. And I think if you want to come and really be a part of something that moves people, moves ideas, moves goods, moves services, moves culture, this is the best place to do it. People from Detroit change the world, which means people come to Detroit to change the world. That's true for the entire state of Michigan. We need you to be part of it. And politically, right now, this is a decisive year in our state. The leadership in Michigan is going to determine the trajectory of the entire Midwest and the direction that this country goes. I want to be that leader. I want to stand tall alongside you and alongside every single Michigander, all 10 million of us who are hungry to create that future. And I need you to be part of it. It's up to us to make the right thing happen. Let's come and do it here and build a dream of health and wealth for everyone. Join me at garlingilchrist.com.
Tell us outside of garlingilchrist.com how our listeners can follow you on social media and get to know more about you.
Holla at me on TikTok, Garlin Gilchrist MI, or on Instagram at Garlin II. Those are the best places to see me. We got content for days that talks about ideas, that talks about what's important to Michiganders. Have a little fun with it too. So come and join me on social media. It's the best place to stay current.
Final question. We ask this of every guest. What is your secret superpower? What is that thing that no one knows about you that you're really good at?
Oh my gosh. I am an expert story reader.
Oh, so for your
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah. Yeah. The kids love the stories. I
Can
got
you
voices,
you do all the voices?
animations. I got all the voices.
Like how many? You got like 20 voices or more?
Whatever the story calls for. You know what I'm saying? Wizard of Oz got a lot of characters.
That's
A
impressive.
lot of voice.
Well, Garland, thank you for being on the podcast. Best of luck to you in your race.
Thank you, Governor.
Our next candidate for Michigan governor on the Andy Beshear podcast is Jocelyn Benson. Jocelyn is Michigan's Secretary of State, where she oversees elections and motor vehicle services for millions of residents. A former law professor and I believe dean of a law school and nationally recognized expert on democracy and voting rights, she's led efforts to expand access to the ballot, protect election integrity, and modernize state services. She's also stood up to President Trump through his direct attacks on the election in Michigan, so we know she's tough. Jocelyn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Governor. It's an honor to be here.
So, Jocelyn, you are currently Secretary of State, and I know you believe in what your current office does, so much so that I know the first time you ran didn't turn out the way you wanted, but you did it again and won those next two races. Tell us what you learned through that process.
I learned how to stand firm, to stand your ground, to stand up for what's right, even when the stakes are high, and to really ensure that when you build a statewide campaign to lead government well, to make government work well for everyone, that you're really building that cross-partisan coalition, talking to Democrats, independents, Republicans, really hearing them, listening to them, developing a plan to solve the problems that all of us are struggling with, and then executing. And when I developed that plan, presented it to voters in 2018. They voted overwhelmingly to support me, and to the point where in my last election in 2022, I won by 14 points, including in counties that no other Democrat won. And it just underscores how important it is that we show up everywhere, that we listen to everyone, and that we serve as public servants, everyone equally, regardless of whether they have a D or an R or an I after their name.
You have a really impressive record as Secretary of State, from revolutionizing voting in Michigan, making it easier, not harder to vote, but also standing up to probably the toughest, nastiest attacks I've ever seen on an office or on a state and voting rights in that state. Tell our listeners a little bit about your term as Secretary of State.
Well, yeah, as Secretary of State, I do two things. I run the DMV and I oversee our elections. So, as the head of the DMV, I'm very popular. Everyone loves going to the DMV. But we actually, as you mentioned, transformed that agency and made it work well for folks and thereby built trust with folks in our system, in my leadership. And that enabled us to also transform democracy because when people believe in government as a tool that can make their lives better, they're more likely to participate in it and be a part of it. So we built a really strong democracy in Michigan, having back to back highest turnout elections in our state's history. But that all came to a head in 2020 when the president, Donald Trump, did not like that he lost Michigan. And so the attacks just came as part of a multifaceted national effort to delegitimize democracy, to further a political agenda, because one guy was upset that he lost an election. And we're still enduring the ramifications of those attacks on democracy today. But what I learned in that, and armed protesters showed up at my home on a snowy December evening with guns challenging me and threatening me and my family. What I learned in that moment was that to truly ensure our government works for everyone, democracy works for everyone, we as leaders need to be willing to stand firm with the truth and the law and the justice on our side and march forward anyway because that's what we signed up to do. So it built a courage, a fortitude in me to stand up to bullies, no matter how wealthy, no matter how powerful, when they try to interfere with the rights and the freedoms of our citizens. And I'm proud to continue to do that as I now work for governor. But as Secretary of State, it's been critical in these formative years to make sure that I know not just what's at stake, but how important it is to have the courage, the moral courage to stand firm, stand up to anyone, and protect the people and their voices.
Well, that experience certainly prepares you right now to be a Democratic governor. And if you can run a DMV, I think you can run anything. Uh, Tell us a little bit about how you view the job as governor a little bit differently, and what's your vision? I mean, what would you be doing day one, and what would you want to see as you end, say, your first term? What you would have accomplished?
What I want to see at the end of my first term are costs down, cost of living down, but also jobs and prosperity on the rise, and to really have Michigan a place where any of us, including our kids, would want to call home. I'm a mom of a 9-year-old little boy, and in 10 years, he's going to be deciding what he does with his future. So for me, this is personal. Everything we do over the next decade will define whether or not he chooses Michigan as a place where he wants to raise his family and call home. And to the extent that we aren't that place right now, people are struggling. They're struggling to pay for childcare, struggling to buy a home in the community they want to live in, and then afford the energy costs of heating that home. All of that requires a state government that's willing to show up for folks and save them time, save them money, and make their lives easier. That's what I've done as Secretary of State. And I've done it at a time, frankly, where, it feels like in many ways at the national level, government is showing up everywhere we don't want it,
Mhm.
and no one will actually need it, right? And so I think as governors, we can actually flip that model and say, look, in this state, government's going to show up for you when you need it, protect you, keep you safe, save you money, save you time, help you get a good paying job, and then get out of the way so that you can prosper and thrive. That's my vision for governing. And it's personal to make that happen for me because I want my kid to live that in our state.
One of the pieces of affordability is healthcare. And you be coming in as governor at a time when healthcare access is under more attack than at any point in my lifetime. The big ugly bill is going to hit rural hospitals like a sledgehammer. The failure to extend tax credits for those that are on the exchanges are going to result in more people losing their coverage. What are your plans to ensure that more people in Michigan can access healthcare?
I think it's job number one for the next governor to make sure quality health care is accessible, affordable, and fair for everyone. That every Michigander has a right to affordable quality health care, and we make that real because of all the risks that we're seeing of coverage loss, premiums on the rise, skyrocketing prescription costs, and a system that too often puts profits over patients and allows insurance companies to be making healthcare decisions when they should be made between a doctor and a patient. And so, what we need to do in Michigan is empower our Health and Human Services Department to enable efficient, accountable, and fair health coverage by modernizing how it's run, which I know how to do based on my work as Secretary of State, and develop a service driven, patient focused state healthcare agency that will, among other things, establish a healthcare affordability board and a patient's bill of rights for healthcare to bring together health providers and patients and develop a plan to reduce healthcare costs, cap skyrocketing prescription costs, and among other things, ensure that medical decisions are made with transparent data and presented in a way that is understandable, accountable, and appealable if it's unfair or unjust.
So you were in a big primary, which is good for democracy, but never feels that way as a candidate. I had a real significant primary when I ran for governor the first time. Tell us what you think differentiates you from your opponents.
Well, for me, and we're all friends, and I say that often. We're all friends here in our primary in Michigan, and whoever gets to the other side of the primary will all lock arms and run forth together to success. But for me, this is my fourth statewide campaign. Every time I've been on the ballot, I've gained support from more voters throughout the state. And as I mentioned earlier, 2 years ago, I won the state by 14 points. I'm the only one running for governor who has run a state agency. I'm the only one who has stood up to bullies in the White House to protect our voters' rights and freedoms. And I'm the only one who knows how to make sure we build those cross partisan coalitions that are necessary to win statewide and govern well. And again, as the CEO of one of our state's largest agencies, I've developed a real track record of working with reasonable leaders on both sides of the aisle to get things done and get things through a divided legislature in a purple state, with the view of just making sure government is working well for everyone and that we're developing a data driven, effective approach to getting things done.
How would you describe your leadership style?
Collaborative and transparent.
They're both important.
Yes.
Uh,
And
uh,
I would add the dose of accountability because I think you set goals and then you meet them and you seek accountability when you don't. And so I think those three things, collaboration with others, transparency, and then being accountable to the people, holding others accountable to you, that's how you actually get things done and do so in a way that generates trust.
so a lot of races are about the challenges you're ready to address, the things that maybe make people pessimistic. What is something about Michigan that you're optimistic about?
We have all the tools and resources we need here in this state to be a driving economic force for the Midwest region and for the entire nation. We've got 20% of the world's fresh water and a number of other great natural resources, international borders, one of the highest airports per capita rate in the country. We've got some of the best, strongest, hardworking people in America, and above all that, we've got amazing universities and research institutions that could help us be at the forefront of generating new ideas, new business growth, and stronger outcomes, higher wages, and cost cutting ideas that we can implement in the state. So all of that together, to me, gives Michigan a tremendous opportunity to lead the nation on a number of things, while also in this moment being led by a governor that will stand up to anyone who would try to rip away the safety of our communities or dampen our rights and freedoms to further their own political agenda.
You do have those borders. I was just up in Detroit with you for a big event,
Yes.
and the hotel they had us in, you could see Canada from the window. I felt like Sarah Palin, but different country and um, definitely a different person. Uh, Tell our listeners who are outside of Michigan why they should be interested in this primary and why they should support Jocelyn Benson.
Well, our race will have national implications. And I've seen firsthand, we saw in the last two presidential elections, how critical it was to have state leaders in place to stand guard over the rule of law, over the safety of our citizens, the safety of our votes, and the health of our democracy. So now, as we head into 2026, where the stage will be set for 2028 and beyond, we need to ensure battleground states like Michigan are led by Democratic governors who know how to run things well, get things done, demonstrate that government can show up when you need it and they get out of the way, and provide a sharp contrast to the cruel, chaotic policies we're seeing coming out of Washington right now. In a way that could hopefully inspire voters, not just in Michigan, but in states elsewhere, of the need to turn the page on this dark chapter of our history that Trump administration has created, and instead lead the nation forward into a brighter day, a stronger economy, and a future that is defined by us, by our voices, not by corporate interests or other types of corrupt, corrosive elements.
So, two questions we ask every one of our guests. The first one is about the why. As Democrats, we're very good about the what. We run on real policy, wanting to get real results. But what's the why? The why that led you to run a couple times just to get this job you've got. The why that wants to make you go through another campaign. The why that makes you want to deal even if people show up armed and protesting outside your house. So, what is Jocelyn Benson's why?
Well, my parents were special education teachers, and I see them and their struggles and their needs in the eyes of every educator and worker in our state. And my kid is 9 years old, and I see his future intertwined with the future of every child in our state. And for me in this moment, is someone who started my career in Montgomery, Alabama, working to learn from the civil rights leaders of the past. I know the eyes of everyone who marched and fought and bled so that we could live in a democracy where people's voices rule the day and our economy has an opportunity for everyone. Their eyes are on us now as we decide who we will be in the future, but also the eyes of those kids, those young people who will inherit what we leave behind and will take the banner forward. Their eyes are on us now, too, in this moment to say, what are you going to do in 2026 to preserve our historic gains, but also ensure we're preserving everything we are as a nation for our future? I will stand up to stand at that bridge to fight forward and march forward any day of the week for a future in which my kid and your kids and all of our kids have an opportunity to thrive, no matter where they choose to live, no matter what job they choose to take on. It's on us to make that future happen for them. And that's why I'm in this race.
I did that Selma March last year at the 60th anniversary, just transformational. So the next question is more about Jocelyn Benson, the person. So we always ask people what their secret superpower is. What are you really good at that no one knows? I mean, Wes Moore apparently can cook, but he also wore his clothes backwards during the crisscross days. My wife can pack a suitcase like nobody's business. Amy Klobuchar apparently doesn't need to sleep. That would actually be a good, productive superpower. So what's yours?
Resilience, but built through. I'm a runner, and I run 2 marathons a year. I run every day. And I ran the Boston Marathon 8 months pregnant. I don't quit. I take everything one step at a time. But being a marathoner has taught me not just the power of resilience and perseverance, but how important it is for us to take challenges and actually use them to make us stronger. Every hill that we run, you use it to make those muscles stronger so that the next time you hit a hill, you can run up it even faster. So I see challenges as opportunities to get stronger, obstacles as opportunities to make us better. And I feel like that's a real superpower for enabling you to overcome challenging times and also just stay the course and not waver. And that's what you also need to be able to get things done for the people we serve.
That one is much more useful than mine. I cook the Thanksgiving turkey better than anyone I know. It's good one day a year.
Very useful.
Uh,
Yeah,
che-
brings people together around the table, unifies. It's a strong skill.
it at least makes my family get along for a little bit.
There
Uh,
you go.
tell our listeners how they can follow you in your campaign.
Well, you can go to my website, jocelynbenson.com, to learn more about me, my campaign, get involved, help us out. This race will have a national impact on the future of our democracy. And so I hope you'll help us win and make sure we can work with great governors all across this nation to turn the page and bring a brighter future for our country.
Thanks for being on the podcast and best of luck.
Thanks for having me.
Our next candidate on this Prime for 2026 edition of the Andy Bashir podcast is Sheriff Chris Swanson. He's the elected sheriff of Genesee County, Michigan, where he's focused on community-based public safety, accountability, and rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the people they serve. A longtime law enforcement professional and reform-minded leader, Swanson is known for emphasizing prevention, transparency, and keeping communities safe while respecting civil rights. Sheriff, welcome to the podcast.
It is an honor, Governor. Thank you so much. And it's nice seeing you again. I saw you last October of 2025 in Detroit.
That's right. That was a great event. Sheriff, let's start off by talking about your current job. Public safety is so important, and it's on everyone's mind, not just whether they're safe, but whether they feel safe. Talk to us about your approach towards public safety.
Well, I think we saw that in November of 25 when you saw people across the country say public safety, affordability, and the working class are their top three most important issues. As a sheriff of a big county in the state of Michigan, after a water crisis in 2016, the George Floyd protests that we decided to walk together instead of riot, those are the things that people want. And like you said, they not only want to know they're safe, but they want to feel they're safe. And that's where leadership comes in at the executive level.
You've emphasized community-based public safety. Tell us what that means in practice.
Well, Governor, I think anybody here can remember when they were given a second chance. I know I can. And after the George Floyd protest, which is just on the heels of a water crisis, we launched what's called Ignite, inmate growth nationally and intentionally through education. It's a mindset, it's a culture change that instead of incarcerating, let's educate. So September of 2020, we launched it, and now we're giving GEDs, diplomas. We're allowing people to go through welding classes that have a direct entry into the apprenticeship program through the ironworkers nationwide. These are the things that break homelessness and addictions and generational incarceration. When that happens, that's what social justice looks like. It drops crime, it drops the population in the jail, and everybody wins.
Now, as governor, you'd have a chance to do that at the prison level. The idea that you reduce recidivism and a future crime never happens. There's no victim. There's no grieving family.
100%. And when I tell people, if we reduce the amount of people going to jail, it's because they're breaking the law less. They're becoming better and not falling back to their addictions. And when that happens, it was studied by Brown, Harvard, and Michigan. It's dropped it over 20%. It saves each individual, the community cost about $7,200. So there's an economic benefit. And now as the governor, there's 32 prisons throughout the state of Michigan. It's got a $2.2 billion budget. Imagine if we were able to drop that down by 20%, what we could do with those $800–900 million, whether it's homelessness or fighting the addiction issue, all the things that governors like you pick up on that need to be funded. We can do that by creating a safer community and bringing less people incarcerated through education.
So you've been viewed nationally as a transformational sheriff. Tell us how you want to take that and move it into the governor's office.
Well, I think people should go back and look at one's actions versus their words. And in May 30th, 2020, when George Floyd was murdered just a few days before, here in Flint, we set a tone. Instead of rioting, which people expected Flint to do, we walked with the people. And when they said walk with us, I said let's walk. And that neutralized the entire issue. It didn't take away the problems, but it at least gave those protesters and those like me who had righteous anger a pathway. And so as governor, when you have these moments where you can say, there is a better way to unite, you can do it with public safety and you can do it with the heart, then people respond to that. And that's what we get to do as sheriffs and eventually as the governor. It's leadership.
So during these times where some worry the American dream is slipping away, when things cost too much, tell us your vision as someone running for governor of Michigan and how you're going to help everyday Americans have that life that's a little bit better and a little bit easier.
Well, I think everybody can appreciate if a governor is able to save $300 to $400–500 a month for each individual. Think about what that can translate to after 12 months. And that is reducing licensing fee, reducing gas taxes, that even though that we use them for road funding, how do we lessen the burden on individuals? Things that people pay for on a statewide, how do we give them a little bit of break so it kind of balances out the whole year? For people that make less than $30,000 gross, why don't we waive state income tax to give them an opportunity to get up on their feet, whether it's a single parent or somebody who lost their job or even somebody who's a widower? My mom is 85 years old and works at JCPenney. She makes $15.35 an hour. These are individuals just trying to grind it out and try to work hard. And you see that in Kentucky. Why don't we help them get to the next level and so they can thrive? And these are the things the governor's able to do, even working with the legislature.
So I'm told you have some connection to Knott County, Kentucky.
Yes, I do. I'd say I have two boys I'm so proud of. My youngest, in August of 22, came and I've taken them all over the country on mission trips to foreign countries and the third world nations. And they said, hey, there's an opportunity for us to go down to a church to help the folks that have been impacted by the floods, just like you did as a governor. And my son and his friends drove down there in a truck. They went to a church in Hindman, Kentucky.
In Hindman, yeah.
Big Branch Baptist, yeah, Hindman. Big Branch Baptist Church.
I know it.
And he was there there you go, Pastor Paddock.
What?
And man, I was so proud of them. They were digging out the furniture. They were moving the stuff from the church into a school. They were moving people's home goods into the school. And that's one of my other connections with Kentucky. And they were great people. My son had a fabulous time. August 2022.
Well, thank your son for me. That was the worst flooding we've ever had. Killed 45 Kentuckians, which that doesn't happen in flooding, and we needed every bit of that help. So you're obviously a really good dad raising him right. Now, I'm told you also have a connection to Louisville, Kentucky.
I do. 2009, I spent about 18 hours between my bike and my run and my swim at Louisville, Kentucky.
Did the Ironman?
I did. I've done 5 Ironmans. I've completed my 5th Ironman in 2023. So Ironman number 2 was at Louisville, Kentucky. And I've always said that when I'm going to do Ironman, I want a great finish. In Louisville, Kentucky, your finish with the lights and the amount of productivity was fabulous. So Ironman number 2, I owe it to Louisville, Kentucky. I love you.
Now, I wonder if you'd be the first sitting governor to ever complete an Ironman in office. Would you try that?
Hey, I have no off button, Governor. I want to do it to inspire other people. And, that was a great community. So don't put anything past that. This election year is like my 6th Ironman. But when I become a governor, hey, I got time to train with the whole state of Michigan.
I want to see the state troopers diving in the water after you trying to keep up. If you need help,
That's right.
the head of my executive detail also does the Ironman. So maybe he could tag along with you.
Yeah. Well, he's a good man for having that fortitude.
We like to ask all our guests 2 of the same questions. The first is, as Democrats, we talk a lot about our what, which is policy, but we like to get to what drives people. We like to get to your why. What's the why that drove you into law enforcement, and what's the why that has you willing to leave a good job where you're making a difference to run for this governor's seat?
Well, to your first point, there's something inside of people that cause them to want to do for others. And that's always been my DNA. I've had the ability to just solve problems in people's lives, even when I was a little kid. I bring order out of chaos. I always say, prepare in peace to perform in chaos. And I've been in this world since I was 18 years old, seen a lot of death and violence. But I'm telling you, Governor, we've been able to put lives together. I teach at the University of Michigan for 28 years in public health. I love pouring into people. I just love leading. And that's the best place to be as an executive leader, and certainly as a sheriff, which carries over as the governor. But to the second thing is, when there's an opportunity to serve at a higher level and to influence people and to write history by seeing the things we can do, then I'm taking the opportunity. There's others in my party that are running. They're great options. But this is what makes me a different Democrat. Common sense decisions, common sense and common ground results, those things that people need. Just listen to the people. They'll tell you what they need.
So as governor, you've got a big cabinet. Certainly in Kentucky, we've got about 30,000 total employees, so a big organization. How would you go about putting together your leadership team?
Well, the governor has about 200 appointees in Michigan, and of course, the state government is quite big. But doing the same thing, we have cabinets. Cabinet of Department of Public Safety, Department of Public Health, Department of Economics and Development. You put the right people, if they have the ability, and not just, and you see it. That's why you're such a popular governor. I get a crossover vote in Genesee County of 30%. You get a crossover vote in Kentucky, just like that. You put the right people in the right spots to make a difference, that's a winning team. And that's what's going to make the Democratic Party powerful again, is building a team of coalition that gets things done across the country so other Democrats can step into leadership. That's what I'm going to do, and that's what I've done my whole life.
Tell our listeners why they should get interested in a Michigan primary and why they should back Chris Swanson.
Because we have seen a moment with momentum that's created the movement. And when I saw you in Detroit, I told you I just come off your Bill Maher interview, and I saw what you said as the chair of the DGA, saying we're looking for people that can inspire the Democratic Party, people that can breathe life into it. And no disrespect to anybody else, but I bring a level of energy that I have not seen, that I've been looking for. And so that's why people can get excited about Michigan, because if Kentucky wins, if Michigan wins, if other states win, we all win. And when that happens with the right reasons and the right hearts, the United States is in a better place.
We also ask all of our guests what their secret superpower is. What is something about you that you're good at that no one knows?
Energy. I have this inside.
I think everybody knows that.
Well, my mom, I tell you, she's about 5 foot. She gets all my energy. but that is my superpower. Is I can bring calmness into people's lives, and I can bring energy to people that feel like they have nothing. That is a superpower I never take for granted. I love doing what I'm doing, but that's it. My superhero growing up was the Incredible Hulk.
Well, tell all of our listeners how they can follow you and your campaign.
Well, I do appreciate it, Governor. SwansonFromMichigan.com. And you can certainly go on social media, and we have owned it, and we have put it out there to show people inside who I am. But that's the official, SwansonFromMichigan.com, or Google Chris Swanson, and you won't be disappointed.
As we close out, give us your elevator pitch, that 30-second pitch, if you just had a moment to tell people why they should vote for you.
I'm a governor who brings order out of chaos, one that you'll be inspired by, one that you'll feel energies by, but that can still get things done. No matter what the situation is, call Chris. I'll protect you, I'll serve you, and I'll unify the state. And when you do that, others will see it and others will duplicate. I won't let you down.
Finally, because you mentioned your son, tell us a little bit about your family.
I love it. I met my wife in jail. It's a great story. Been married for 31 years. She was a social worker. I met her in 1993. We got met her in 94. And I got 2 boys. My oldest is in dental school down in Florida, married to a nurse. My youngest got married last year. He's married to a girl that just graduated from Michigan State. The Swanson 6 is complete. My boys are best friends. They Mary's best friends. And they're just good people. They serve people. Yeah.
I think we are about 9 months into this podcast, and you just had the line of the entire Andy Beshear podcast history. I met my wife in jail.
There you go. I'll take it.
Chris, thanks for joining us. Best of luck in your race.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for leading our party and the governors of the state of Michigan and beyond.
Next on the Andy Beshear podcast, a segment this week that's only available on YouTube at Andy Beshear Podcast, my conversation with the Johns. This is when I talk to my 2 friends who helped co-found this podcast, John Rabinowitz, an attorney and small business owner, and John McConnell, who's been an insurance agent, also a small business owner. And today, I think we've got to start by talking about John McConnell's wardrobe. Something looks new. Something looks different.
It's hiding the fact I don't have hair, but it might
Not
be
the beard.
No, it's not the beard. Yeah, the beard's gone. But yes, the hat is helping me keep the glare off of my head. So
No, I like the new swag. And I understand we're going to have a lot more swag coming out.
This is the new merch. Today, I think we call it the drop of the Andy Beshear Podcast hat, available at andybeshearpodcast.com. You can click on our merch store. It looks pretty good, John.
all right. Well, I think anything that helps hide the fact I don't have hair probably helps. So I'll take the win.
I think it looks great.
So we just heard from the 3 major Democratic candidates in the primary for Michigan governor. What are your first thoughts?
Listen, I love the energy. I will tell you that's one thing I took from the 3 candidates. I think that Michigan's going to have some tough decisions. If this is an indication of all the candidates that are out there, I mean, the state's really lucky. And I mean, listen, again, goes back to the national play, right? Affordability and healthcare is pretty consistent in public service, but pretty consistent issues throughout all 3.
And all of them seem to go back to that. And all of them did mention about how important it's going to be for Michigan to be involved in the races going forward, especially 2028.
There was also one other thing that stood out to me. I'm really disappointed that our friend here has not done an Ironman, nor done a marathon. I mean, what are we?
Yes.
I've seen you in power walk at like 12.
The other was a college basketball player.
Basketball player.
What struck me is they all offer something really compelling. You look at the lieutenant governor who brings this data-driven approach, has a different, unique background and a great record as lieutenant governor. Then you got Jocelyn Benson, who is tough as nails. I mean, a president came after a secretary of state, and she pushed back. She also had to lead through the pandemic, helping people vote, and that's not easy. That was a big task for secretaries of state. And then you got Sheriff Swanson, who has that law enforcement background at a time when people don't always feel safe. What good training? What a good background. But then to say, there's a traditional way of law enforcement, but let's think about maybe how we could do things a little different and a little better.
I also love the story the lieutenant governor told when you asked kind of like, what's your why? And he said, I want everybody to stay in Michigan more or less. And, that's something we can all relate to. We think we have the best state. And we want to promote it. And I just think that he did a great job, but everybody had a story we could relate to.
Yeah. And Garland also talked about the fact that him being a software engineer, going back and talking about the AI boom, which we've talked about AI here. I mean, John's talking about robots for the house at some point, and his ability to understand what that infrastructure looks like in his state.
Well, and I think about the Secretary of State and running a DMV. And for
Yeah.
somebody who's trying to improve our DMVs because they used to be run by county clerks who then said we don't want any part of it. And over the past 6 years, we've had to build it from the ground up. That's actually a pretty good retail experience.
Without question, unique leader, the only one that's kind of led an agency of that size, I would guess.
And then the line, I think, of both
Oh.
seasons from the sheriff, I met my wife in jail. Now, I met mine at a Mexican restaurant, but I met
That
mine
story
in
could have
jail.
gone in many different directions. It ended very well.
Yes.
So for moving to the funny to the pretty serious, I think we were all pretty shocked to wake up. I think it was Saturday morning with news that the United States military had gone into Venezuela and had apprehended both its president Maduro and his wife, and were taking them to the United States to stand trial.
And when you look at the balance, I guess, of leadership, especially in South America, and we have a fleet sitting there. So how is this going to affect things every time Trump sends a tweet and you happen to be the leader of another country?
Here's my struggle with it a little bit. I think he was 100% an illegitimate dictator, and I think we're a safer country with him not being in power. I'm a little worried that there seems to be some kind of mixed messaging on what's next on terms of who's leading the country, how we're leading the country. I want to say that I'm, as usual, incredibly impressed with our military in the precision, and really proud that it sounds like a lot of the Delta Force training was done here in Kentucky.
I think we're on the same page with this one, that both what we are impressed by, but what we're concerned by is nonpartisan. I'm impressed that the U.S. military, which has no peer in the world, could pull this mission off, it seems, flawlessly in another country. It's pretty incredible. But we can both think that our military performance is impressive, but also really worry about whether any planning has come into what's next. I mean, our generation is coming off of 2 wars, one in Afghanistan and one in Iraq, where we had troops, our friends, that were over there for years on end. And I think when Trump ran, he said, this is not going to happen while I'm president. We're not going to get involved in foreign entanglements. We're going to be focused on the American people. And now he's saying we're going to run Venezuela. And when Marco Rubio says, no, that just means we're going to push and force their decisions, Trump comes back and says, no, we are going to run Venezuela. And then within about 6 hours of the operation, he's already talking about American companies seizing the oil.
Yep.
So it concerns me about the why, and the real why. Was this about drugs, narco-terrorism, or was it about oil? And the second piece is, after everything that our troops went through in Iraq and Afghanistan, there better be a well-thought-out plan in place that is explained to the American people now.
Yeah, my understanding is that he was going to talk to Congress today, like this afternoon, and explain the plan. I don't know if that's happened since the airing of this episode. I will tell you the consistent question I get from even the most strong Trump supporter is, how can he do this? Like, and it really is kind of a balance as you like international law versus domestic law.
But he needs to explain that.
Yeah.
Right? All these actions, they kept saying, the bombing of the boats, they kept saying, well, there's a memo. Well, let us see the memo. It's classified. Well, you at least have to give us the legal basis for the actions. John, I think you said something really interesting too. Think about how much of our Navy is currently off the coast of Venezuela. And I understand that Venezuela is a source of cocaine, not as much heroin and fentanyl, the drugs that are killing our people. But is that where in this, you know, global world of conflict and change, it ought to be stationed?
Well,
But
I will tell you one thing I do go back to that I'm very much in support of is keeping countries like China and Russia out of our region. Is this the best approach? I don't know, but I definitely don't want them in our Western Hemisphere
but do you
with
worry?
access to our
Do
resources.
you worry if we say, well, this is our hemisphere, so we can go into Venezuela, that China says, okay, then we can go into Taiwan?
Absolutely, I think it totally is a green light for that. In my that and I mean, what about Russia right now? So I think it doesn't set the best precedent in the world, but I mean, being here in America, not that I want to be an isolationist, I think we're a safer country for it happening. Not just sure that was the best approach.
I think maybe we're safer in the coming days. I do wonder for global stability if we're safer overall,
Sure.
if it gets them moving. Okay, something that was mentioned in all three of the candidates that I think is continuing to be a big challenge is affordability. It's the inability of American families that are working hard, that have decent jobs to get by. And this kind of strikes me because in his press conference, Trump said they're going to make Venezuelans rich, while Americans back home are struggling.
And that's a hard statement, especially whenever Trump says it's a myth. Affordability is not a issue here in the States. It's a hoax. And it's not. Things cost more every time you go out.
The lieutenant governor said something today that I could totally relate to when he said, I got to make sure my daughter's out of the house. And so the same thing with my three daughters. I mean, I love Caroline. She's back here from college. I said, honey, I love that you're here, but when are you leaving again just to go back to college? Because it's like having two of my wives. They're like, it's a mini me. And so what I would tell you is that it's not getting easier for them yet.
The sheriff also talked about saving people $500 a month.
Yeah.
And the idea of what that can do. We also heard about housing and that idea that if you can't afford that first home, how much it just pulls on you. And so I think rightfully that this is going to be, and John Rabinowitz, you said this, a real driving issue nationally in all these campaigns. My hope is it brings Democrats and Republicans together to work on it, because wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the issue, right? I don't think there's a way to avoid it. I think both parties are going to have to address it and address it like yesterday.
But the challenge, and it's what I worry about some of the things that everybody knows we need to do in Kentucky, but I'm hearing in the background is, well, if we do this now and address this issue, does it give you a win being on X party when we're in Y party? And so when affordability is something that everybody knows is something we should address, can people put wins and losses aside and just do the right thing?
So as head of the DGA, we had some of the candidates, and we're going to have candidates from many states in the future. How do you navigate the process when it's in the primary?
We want to make sure every candidate's campaign can win a general. Because in a primary, sometimes whether it's the talent on the campaign, maybe the messaging, the fundraising, all these things that go into winning, you can have a campaign that might be able to win the primary, but you need to alter for the general. There's not time to alter a campaign team for the general. So we want to make sure that each of the major primary candidates is gathering the resources, is getting the right advice. So a lot of it is assisting, consulting with each of them, and encouraging them. I mean, from my standpoint, I know how tough it is to go through, and sadly, two of the three candidates that we saw today are going to lose in that primary. But remember, my lieutenant governor lost her first race. Jocelyn Benson lost her first race. And so one thing I want to do in this role is to make sure that people know that this shouldn't be the end. These are all talented people that I hope will find a
And
future.
probably will play a role in the government of that respective state at some point.
Now, finally, on this episode, I had a pretty strong My Kentucky accent. Tim Walz has been a friend of mine, but I was talking to him the day after his good friend, former Speaker of the House in Minnesota, was murdered, along with her husband. I remember when Tommy Elliott, my close friend, was murdered. And let me just start again there. I remember when Tommy Elliott, my close friend, was murdered, and how that still sticks with me today. The president, on his Truth Social, to millions upon millions upon millions of people, posted some conspiracy theorist video saying that Tim Walz had something to do with orchestrating it. That's accusing somebody of murder simply for being your political opponent. I think that's below being human.
Yeah, and after getting to meet Tim's at your inauguration and spending time with him and the church service and the genuine human he is and the kindness he shows, just to come back and be hit below the belt like that, it's just hard.
Yeah, it's brutal. I will say, I think I told you this too. These tweets are so common now.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's not great, but I kind of like just ignore it. I'm like, oh, it's just our president being our president. It's probably not good because it's our president. So,
But after losing who he claimed to be a friend in Charlie Kirk, and saying all this hateful rhetoric that comes out is wrong and you shouldn't put it on social media, look at what he does. Is it that he only cares when it happens to him and he doesn't give a darn about anybody else out there? I'm pretty close to thinking that's true.
that's horrible. I do have one last thing I want to talk to you about. This week you have the State of the Commonwealth address.
Yes.
I guess what? One more left after this. And so how do you prepare? What are you excited about it?
I am excited about it. For me, it's allowed me to kind of put together a lot of things we've talked about on this podcast. I'll have given it by the time that this episode comes out, and it's on the American dream. Because while we are doing better than most in Kentucky, and we just had our second best year for economic development ever, since I've been governor, we've had our first, second, third, and fifth best years in our history. While we've been ranked as one of the best states for building affordable new housing, while our healthcare exchange is doing better than most, we face a lot of federal headwinds. And I recognize that people out there are struggling. We can be proud that Kentucky's doing better than most, but we can also recognize that there are families that are struggling that with a better program, with maybe a tiny bit of help, could make it. And then more of us are making it. We're even more productive. So in my State of the Commonwealth, I talk about how we're going to invest in jobs, continuing to make sure we have the best sites, that we have funds for rural Kentucky where they've been close to but haven't had that big economic development opportunity. I'm going to talk about a historic investment in housing. I'm proposing a $150 million investment from our rainy day fund and our affordable housing trust fund. That leverages about $9 of private funding for every $1 of public funding. That means we could have a one-time influx of $1 billion of affordable housing, because we can't go small if we want to catch up.
Sure.
Otherwise, we have whole generations that are just going to miss it. I have a couple ways to make healthcare more affordable on the exchange, a rural hospital fund, because we can't let them close. We can't make a woman in Kentucky drive several hours just to give birth. We've got some funds to help people who would otherwise go hungry, getting kicked off SNAP. But a lot of it is about where we've got to go as a people. And I close it out by talking about, we've been through some divisive times before. I mean, our capital, which is under renovations, our statue of Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address is on a plaque in there. We have been through divisive times before, and we've come out on the other side. The thing we got to remember is, our neighbor isn't the enemy from within. She's just our neighbor, trying to get by in a real tough world. So if we can remember that, if we can all take a breath out, come back together, if we can move beyond the cruelty, back to our humanity, then being a Democrat or Republican will matter less. Being a Kentuckian and an American will matter a lot more.
That's great.
That's my Cliff Notes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. And I think in the middle of the address,
I was going to ask.
I will have to just make a sip from
I got to wear
With
one.
Andy Bashir podcast mug. In the middle of the state of Commonwealth? No.
That's too bad. Well, John, what can you do? Lastly, John, one thing you and I wanted to talk about. How's your dry January?
The
going?
dry January, one of the
That's healthy.
not the best decision I've ever made. I can tell you that, but
healthy.
healthy.
I mean,
yes.
I guess it's healthy. Somebody said to me yesterday they were doing it, and their stretch day was like Easter. Mine is January 31st. So I'm all in. I'll let you know the health benefits and the challenges because I think there'll be many.
Well, all I'd say to anybody else out there joining you on this journey, if you're struggling, you can always spend time subscribing to our YouTube channel at Andy Bashir Podcast. You can go online and buy merch. Nothing helps you through dry January like Andy Bashir Podcast
I think so.
merch. And that's on our website, andybashirpodcast.com. This week on the Andy Bashir Podcast, we have the return of a segment we call In My Kentucky Accent. It's where I talk about what's on my heart and my mind, what's given me hope, or what's upsetting me this week. And sadly, this week it's the latter. As we're filming this, it's just been a couple of days since Donald Trump hit yet another level of depravity. He posted a video on social media from a conspiracy theorist suggesting that Governor Tim Walz had something to do with the murder of the former Speaker of the House in Minnesota and her husband. What I know is that former Speaker of the House and Governor Walz were some of the closest friends that anybody has ever had. I remember when this happened, how much it tore at Tim, how much it hit him very personally, how emotional he was, and somebody like me who has lost a close friend to an act of violence, I could tell just how painful that moment was. But this president apparently has no limits, doesn't care whatsoever, and is willing to incite political violence against his perceived enemies. This should have been totally out of bounds, not just for a president, but for any human being, especially one that calls himself a Christian. This isn't loving your neighbor as yourself. This is hating on your neighbor to the maximum of your ability. I'd say to the president, try to be presidential, but we know you're not going to do that. I'd try to say just be a decent human being, but it doesn't appear that you care about doing that. How about this? Just don't be a total jerk. That's my Kentucky accent. Hey, podcast family, it's Andy and the Johns. The Johns are sitting here in their brand new Andy Bashir podcast merch. What do you think of it, fellas?
It's great. I always love a good hat.
Yeah, listen, I love it. And I hear there's a rumor that there's going to be some swag that says Andy Bashir Podcast and the Johns.
Yeah.
Finally, John, so respect.
I think finally we're going to get some merch to drop that's actually going to feature us.
We'd love to see you in the Andy Bashir podcast merch. Make sure you take those photos, post it to social media, and tag us at Andy Bashir Podcast. We will feature one great photo on our YouTube channel every week. So join us at the Andy Bashir Podcast. You can download us on all major platforms or catch us on Sirius XM Progress at 11 a.m. on Saturday mornings. And that's a wrap on this episode of the Andy Bashir Podcast. We'll be back next week with another episode of Prime for 2026, where you can learn about the most exciting primary candidates around the country. Stay safe this week, do good things, and be kind to each other.